Welcome to Behind the Campaign, the podcast where marketers pull back the curtain on some of their best campaigns. I'm joined today by Scott Purcell, who is the co-founder of Man of Many. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks so much for having me, Andy. Really excited to be chatting with you today.
And you're coming to us from down under, yes?
Yeah, coming to you from Sydney.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about Man of Many and how you work with brands, because I think it's a pretty interesting business model and it kind of leads us directly to the campaign that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, sure. Well, Man of Many has been around now for about 13 years. We're Australia's largest men's lifestyle site, so a lot of your listeners might be familiar with websites like GQ and Esquire. While they're also present here in Australia with their own kind of local variations, we're actually much larger than them here in the Australian market. So we're a digital publisher by trade. We are also Australia's very first 100% carbon neutral publisher, which is something we're incredibly proud of. I think the nature of our publication is that we cover a lot of things that like consumer products, technology, the latest in products, culture and style, and making sure that it's kind of premium and approachable to a lot of the audience that reads us as well. Even though we've got Man of Many in our name, about 40% of our readers are female. So we make sure we don't really write with kind of male focused voice necessarily, make sure that it's really approachable to a wider audience as well.
And you work with a lot of different brands on their campaigns, correct?
Yeah, so the majority of the way that we make our revenue is through branded campaigns. So that either comes direct from large advertising agencies, in which they'll kind of brief a number of different publishers and will pitch for that work, or it'll come from directly with brands themselves. So usually through their marketing managers and the existing relationships that we have. So those campaigns can be anything from written content, display banner campaigns across our website, things like podcasts like we're doing now, video, which I'm sure we'll get more of into today. And then also sometimes things like events or giveaways and things of that nature.
So today we're talking about a brand called Angel's Envy, and it is a bourbon distillery in Kentucky in the United States. So
Yeah.
how did you get connected with this brand?
So Angel's Envy is actually owned and represented by Bacardi, and Bacardi Australia reached out to us. This is one of those ones where we have quite a close relationship with the brand directly. Surprisingly, Australia is probably one of the biggest bourbon consumers in the world behind the US, but a lot of it's in the form of what we call RTDs, which are ready to drink cans. So premixed cans like bourbon and Coke or bourbon and cola, but they're not huge drinkers of kind of the more premium variants of bourbon that, like Pappy Van Winkle or Eagle Rare or those sorts of things. So a big part of the goal of this campaign was to kind of educate the Australian consumer about Angel's Envy and the quality of their spirit. We ourselves at Man of Many, just by our very nature, are very passionate about whiskey, very much experts in that space. We run an annual event called Sydney Whiskey Month, where we celebrate spirits with a number of different brands by hosting events with our readers. And so Bacardi Australia reached out to us to see if we could create a campaign primarily to kind of educate the Australian consumer and really tell their brand story, particularly as Australians might not be as familiar with it here in the local market.
And as you mentioned, you leaned very heavily into storytelling. Some of the videography that you did was just beautiful. You kind of started by going to the beginning of the roots of the bourbon market in Kentucky and then kind of very quickly pivoted to how Angel's Envy kind of weaves into that history. So what was the kind of brainstorming around this idea of the storytelling and bridging the old to the new, and how Angel's Envy, kind of goes together with that?
I think the average consumer, when they see like not just to say that Angel's Envy is expensive, but when they do see like an expensive bottle of spirit on the shelf, they may not understand the level of craft and work that's actually gone into that. Typically for, bourbons to be aged, it's not something that happens overnight. It has to be sitting in barrel for a number of years. So being able to tell that story from grain to glass was really important for us, and going and visiting and meeting the people behind that whole process. So being able to meet some of the farmers, meet the head distiller and the actual craft that goes into distilling that liquid, also how they choose the barrels, and really educating the Australian consumer that there's a lot of care that goes into the liquid that's in their bottle. It's not just a machined manufactured process. There's real hands, real graft, real hard work that goes into producing something that's as special as Angel's Envy. So I think for us, that whole storytelling process was really exciting, not just for this brand in particular, but as I mentioned, we're very passionate whiskey consumers ourselves. So being able to get stuck into the nitty gritty and have some of those learnings even ourselves, being able to learn them directly from the brand was really exciting to do as part of this campaign.
And Angel's Envy has a very unique product that's unlike a lot of others, and you tell that story about the barrels and how they're, kind of how the whiskey is aged in these kind of different barrels, and I'll let you kind of explain it. But, I imagine that part of your goals with this campaign were to help differentiate Angel's Envy from some of their competitors. What were some of your other goals through that?
Yeah, I think one of the key things that we wanted to really highlight for this campaign was kind of the more bespoke nature of their whiskey. Like a lot of your listeners will be familiar with Jim Beam and Jack Daniels, which are a little bit more mass market. They produce a lot more volume than Angel's Envy. But I think we really wanted to go deeper into the craft and the care that goes into Angel's Envy. So the name itself, I think, is very telling. When whiskey gets aged in a barrel, obviously there's a lot of evaporation that occurs over the years as it ages, and that evaporation they refer to as the angel's share. So because it disappears essentially, and Angel's Envy is basically the angels being envious of the liquid that's left back in that barrel, which is so delicious for the average consumer. So I think being able to kind of dive deeper into those brand roots was really, really important, showing like the real humans behind the brand, how passionate they are. Everyone we spoke to working there genuinely, truly loved their job. One thing I find always interesting about master distillers at a lot of the whiskey distilleries we chat to is the work that they put into producing this liquid. They may not even see themselves because it has to sit in barrel for a number of years. So they may not even see the benefit of the craft and the work they put into it, but that they really care about the heritage of the brand. So they want to carry that through for future generations. So I think that's something that we did a really great job of telling, particularly with our editor-in-chief, Nick Hall, who went over to visit in Kentucky. He did a really great job of telling that story.
You mentioned, all of the people that you spoke with and interviewed for this series. How did you decide who you were going to interview with Angel's Envy, and kind of did that influence the direction of the piece?
A lot of the best bits that we got from filming were kind of off the cuff moments. When we were filming, we didn't expect to, for instance, go into the barrel rooms and be able to pull directly from the cask, which is one of my favorite shots in the film,
It was
being
so cool.
getting some of those like special kind of off the cuff moments. I think given this was a branding piece and an educational piece, it was really important to talk about both the kind of the craftsman side of it. So the farmers, the master distillers, the people who are charring the barrels and the cooperage. But also we spoke directly with the brand marketing manager, because I think it's really important for them to be able to put a voice behind the brand, understanding what they themselves are trying to achieve and communicate. But the thing that we noticed was everyone was perfectly aligned on their brand mission, and really wanting to produce the best possible product. So being able to kind of see that as we were interviewing people was really, really exciting. The other thing I should say as well, like this not only is kind of educational for our own audience when we're promoting it, but a lot of the assets and video footage that we shot is kind of licensed back to Angel's Envy and Bacardi for them to use in their own promotion and marketing. When we launched the film, we had a private showing with all of Bacardi Australia's entire Australian marketing staff here in Sydney. So they hadn't actually seen this film before. We showed it in a cinema. It was really, really
Oh,
fantastic. And I think it was kind of the first time they've dived deeper into that longer format storytelling. I think the nature of like social media now, people are looking for short reels, easy hits of dopamine. But I think this is really a showcase of how powerful longer form storytelling can be for a brand. Getting people to sit back for a good, 10 to 15 minutes and engage and learn more makes people much more enamored to a brand than something that's kind of fleeting on social media when they're scrolling to the next reel. So I think we'll be doing much more of this kind of longer form storytelling for a lot of the campaigns we're doing.
Yeah, and it's so authentic, and I think in today's age of, you know, AI slop, as everyone's
Yep.
calling it, everything is fake and you never know what's real. This idea of telling the story and it being very authentic and the beautiful videography and the interviews with the folks, it was kind of touched those emotional strings.
Yep.
Of the audience. So is that something I'm assuming that you guys set out to do? How did you think about that as you were developing this?
Yeah, that's kind of been behind our brand ethos ourselves with Man of Many. So our tagline's the latest in products, culture, and style. And obviously, everyone is talking about AI at the moment. I think there's a lot of publishers doing the wrong things with AI, but by our very own tagline, people don't want to come to Man of Many to learn about how AI is experiencing a whiskey. They want to understand how a real human, what it tastes like, and I think our value is lies in the antithesis to AI, which is that real human experience. I think consumers are really valuing that now. We have a pretty clear policy that we don't publish any AI written content to our website. We're very strict with that with our own journalists and a lot of the freelancers that we work with, because I think if we're just publishing AI content or AI slop, anyone can do that. And then you're kind of eating away at your own value, your own expertise, your own personal opinions. So I think we're leaning more heavily into that in a lot of the brand work and storytelling that we're doing. The other thing I should mention is we built a lot of trust with our audience through our own kind of editorial. We try and remain like fairly objective in a lot of the reporting and things that we do. We don't touch things like politics. We don't want to get people offside. We want to be really approachable with the content that we put out there. So leveraging off that trust, our sponsored campaigns perform just as well, if not better, than a lot of our own editorial, because our consumers and readers know that we're approaching it with the right mindset. Like this Angels Envy campaign was kind of something that I personally loved doing. Not that I had too much to do a part of it, but loved consuming it ourselves. So anytime we can kind of produce a campaign that we're our own audience is something that works really well. It's really authentic, and I think that comes through in the film as well.
Yeah. You filmed in a lot of different places. Like you said, you filmed in the distillery and their offices out and, with farmers. Did you have any challenges when you were doing all of that videography, all of that filming? Was there anything that kind of was a little bit of a snag or a barrier for you?
I probably can't speak to this because I wasn't fortunate enough to be over in Kentucky myself, but there were two videographers that we worked with on this project. We had about, I think, 2 or 3 days to film. We're very, very extremely lucky to have Nick, our editor in chief, I mentioned earlier. He managed to do most things in 1 to 2 takes, from what I heard from the videographers when I met them. He is an amazing storyteller, so I think that definitely helped with the filming process. But I think like some of the most authentic moments were kind of when people were mic'd up, not speaking to camera directly necessarily, or it was kind of like a run and gun with the videographers where they may be setting up. There's some beautiful shots which are kind of fixed sets and they've got lighting set up, but some of the best stuff kind of came when people were just talking and they were milling around, and the videographers were able to capture those moments and kind of those genuine moments of surprise and delight getting to try the whiskey.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the authenticity, right? That kind of
Mm,
not staged, and even though the filming on this was gorgeous and very highly polished, I think a lot of times people are looking for, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
mm,
In today's world, you can create content that, is not necessarily super polished, like just interviewing your CEO or whatever the case may be
yeah,
in a very kind of
yeah.
off the cuff kind of way. Are you guys doing any of that kind of, less polished type of videography or brand work in any of the things that you're doing working on?
Yeah, all the time, to be honest. We film everything on smartphones sometimes around the office. So we do a lot of vox pops with our own team of trying different products. I think by our nature being kind of like a premium lifestyle website, people expect a certain level of quality, particularly in the audio of the footage that we film. So we do try and maintain that, but there are certain things that don't don't require it. Like if we're attending an event, for instance, we may have a videographer along with us, but you can also get just as good footage now on your smartphone. And with the little Rode mics or those sorts of things, or we use little small DJI gimbals that we often take out to film with for a lot of our campaigns. I think, yeah, it's becoming much more flexible, particularly for ways in which we can film. Also, the roles in our company, being a digital publisher, are changing so quickly. Just 3 years ago, you would have had journalists who all they did is write. Now they have to be in front of camera, recording podcasts, filming video. Some of them are editing video themselves. So the nature of marketing in general is becoming very much multi-skilled. Building up that skill set's really, really important, but also understanding how each of those different mediums work, because I think the nature of things is that consumers are wanting to consume news and campaigns and things in different formats, whether it's audio, video, on social media and short form. So being able to kind of deliver our content in all of those different formats is really important.
Yeah, I'm noticing that too here, even in central Indiana, where I'm at. A lot of the local news journalists are doing a lot more on video, particularly vertical video. They're creating TikTok accounts where they're posting kind of behind the scenes news and things like that. So I think
Mm,
that's a good point, is that, roles are really shifting and people have to be multi-skilled in a lot of different areas when they're in this marketing and communication space is kind of all melding together. So that's a really great point. People often look at the videos like you guys put together for Angels Envy and they think, oh, they either don't think about the time and energy and resources that it took to put all of that together, or they
mm.
think it happens a lot more quickly than it actually does. Those of us who have worked on those types of content know all of the work that goes into it. Can you talk to us a little bit about how all of that came together? Because you have the messaging, you have the writing, you have the video, you have trying to figure out who you're going to interview and getting them all scheduled. And I'm sure there were rounds and rounds and rounds of edits
Yeah.
after the first draft was done, and then reviewing it internally yourself, probably reviewing it with the client multiple times, changing little things here and there. Can you talk to us a little bit about kind of the breadth of this project?
Yeah, again, I need to be upfront that I didn't have a great deal of input into this particular project, and it's probably a lesson for myself to keep my fingers out of getting in the way of certain things with our team. But I guess I can speak to Nick,
Yeah.
who was instrumental in kind of putting together the script, the plan for the campaign, kind of storyboarding what we wanted to film. We worked really, really closely with those two videographers as well, who helped with that whole editing process. I can't tell you how many different color grades that whole thing went through. Getting the messaging right was really important. Bacardi themselves were also incredibly helpful in providing us with, you'll see there's a lot of archival footage of the original distillery in there, kind of like the build footage of the building of their new distillery. Also, something that was really important was kind of setting the scene of the city itself, so, with drone footage and that sort of thing. So I think it all kind of came together working quite collaboratively with the brand. So collaboration is one of kind of our core values here at Man of Many, making sure that we're not simply kind of getting paid to do something and just delivering it and saying our job's done. We want to make sure that we have the brand's involvement early on in the piece. We also had one of the Australian brand marketing managers from Bacardi travel over with us on the shoot. Not really to supervise, but I think having them there was really, really helpful, just to kind of showcase how much care we put into that work and making sure we delivered ultimately what they wanted in the end. I should also say, like, I know I mentioned this is kind of a longer form piece, but we do have social cut downs and those sorts of things as well, that the brand can use in some of their advertising and things like that. So there's still a lot more editing to come from
Yeah.
from this longer form piece. So yeah, it's still a work in progress and really excited to be rolling it out.
Yeah, that was actually gonna be my next question is you have this, like, kind of what we would call a crown jewel piece of content, this 14, 15-minute long video, and then I'm sure there was a very thoughtful strategy around, "Okay, now what else can we do with this?" Because you've put so much time and resources and energy into this piece, you wanna make sure you get as much bang for your buck as you
Yeah.
possibly can. Did you do print pieces? You mentioned social. What kinds of other content are you building out of this campaign?
Yeah, so it's a multi-format campaign. So we've got display assets, surrounding display across our website, Man of Many, which we're really proud to have like really high viewability for those assets. I think kind of that contextual advertising is really, really powerful for brands. We've got a lot of research and studies that people see. I think 85% of our readers consider a brand more favorably when they see it across Man of Many. And I think that speaks to a lot of the trust that we've built with our audience. So we have a written campaign, which is a native article that gets published across a number of different formats like Apple News, MSN, our newsletter. We promote that written piece across social media. We also have then kind of like the static visual assets from shooting over there. So not only did we do like video content, we also shot some photography. And then there's obviously kind of like the video and audio aspects that is the long form and also the short form assets as well. But I think one of the most exciting things is that given kind of the small nature of our team, we were able to produce something that was really, really high quality and relatively cheap for a brand to do, if I'm honest, compared to some of the kind of larger advertising agencies who might charge hundreds of thousands for, a smaller shoot and have 30 people on site. Where we were able to pull off something at a reasonable budget and deliver something that's of great value, not only to us, but also the brand that we're working with as well.
So Angel's Envy and Bacardi worked with you on this, I'm assuming to introduce it to the Australian audience. How is obviously, we all live in on this big
Yeah,
blue
yeah.
marble, right? How are you seeing those assets or, translate into I'm assuming there's some work that's being done here in the US with some of these assets, or do you
Yeah.
ever work with other men's lifestyle brands or other publishers or agencies here in the US to sort of use those assets or use the campaigns that you do, in multiple countries?
Yeah, 100%. So, Man of Many, we're the largest men's lifestyle site here in Australia, but our largest audience actually is in the US. Just the nature of the things that we write about being kind of universally applicable means that consumers and readers all around the world consume our contents. We make sure that a lot of the content we produce is still relevant to them. We do have a bit of an Australian focus with certain things, but we make sure that it's still interesting, still good storytelling if we are producing that content. The nature of campaigns, typically if they come from brands locally here in the Australian market, it will be benchmarked against an Australian audience. So the display assets might only be targeted or geo-targeted to an Australian consumer. But then the good thing is like the written content, the social media posts, the video on our YouTube that goes out to a global audience. So even though we might put some social spend or boosting or paid advertising across Facebook and Google and YouTube and that sort of thing and promote it to an Australian audience, global consumers can still find and consume it. And I think it's a rarity that people actually want to consume this advertising because it's actually
Yeah.
authentic, it's actually interesting. It's actually a great piece of content. It's not like there's not many kind of advertising, I would say nowadays that people would go out of their way to consume it. And I think that's something we're really focused on is making sure that what we do is quality enough for people to seek out on its own as well.
That's great. And we'll make sure we include the link to the video in the podcast description. So if you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube, look down in the description and you can click on the link and watch the video because it's beautiful. And like you said, it's very rare for people these days to want to consume that longer form content because our brains are just wired to, do things quickly and
Yeah.
want that quick dopamine hit, but it is a beautiful story and you guys did such a great job with it.
Yeah, no, thank you. We're really excited. I think there'll be much more of this sort of longer form storytelling. As I mentioned, Man of Many's moving pretty heavily into podcasting. I think particularly in the men's lifestyle space, there's a lot of people who do podcasting and life coaching in a really bad way, that is very isolationist and not applicable to a lot of people. So purpose and mission at Man of Many is to empower people to make positive investments in themselves and their communities. So I think if we can do podcasting in the right way, that will also be in video formats across our YouTube, is something that we're really excited for in future.
Very cool. And the most important question, did you get to taste test Angel's Envy and what did you think?
Yes, we've actually got a part of their service is they offer engraved bottles.
Oh,
So
nice.
we've got a Man of Many engraved Angel's Envy bottle here in the office, which we will be cracking for our Christmas party that we're holding with clients on Thursday next week, in 1 week's time. So yeah, we're really, really excited. Nick and Harry as well, who's our branded content manager, he is in charge of actually rolling out all of those assets and kind of looking after the execution of the campaign. Harry Parsons, Nick and him also got personalized engraved bottles. So Bacardi was very generous to us, and I can't wait to. I have had it before, but I can't wait to share it with the entire team.
The perks of working on projects that you really enjoy, I think is tremendous.
Yeah, yeah, we're very lucky. As I said earlier, we're kind of our own readers and our own consumers. So being able to get to try and experience these things at Man of Many is really exciting. A key thing I always tell my team is to be transparent about our relationship with brands. If we have been gifted something for free or to try, or if it's paid, that's something that's really, really important, that we're transparent with our consumers. So they understand that relationship, and we're not trying to like pull anything over their eyes. So I think that goes back to that value of trust that we have built as well.
Yeah, trust is so important. It reminds me that when you work on a project or a product that you love, the work just comes out so much better than if you're working on a project that you don't really care about. And I've been lucky enough to have people on this podcast who really enjoy what they do and have talked very glowingly about their projects, and you could tell that they really enjoy it. So I think that obviously came through in this project.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a labor of love. The entire team really put their heart and soul into this, and it's one of the kind of most exciting projects we've done. We've got a few things coming out before the end of the year as well that we're really excited to showcase. That is some more longer form content, and some more storytelling. But yeah, I can't speak to that just yet, but very excited for what's ahead.
Well, maybe you can come on after those campaigns are launched and talk about those.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
I'll
always
have to
welcome
get
back.
It's another one that Harry Parsons and Frank Arthur, my other co-founder, have been really, really heavily involved with. You asked about the editing process. This one has been an absolute marathon, I would say. There's three different videos we're doing for this one coming up. So with three really exceptional, amazing. So I can't wait to put that out to market.
Maybe you'll be my first, like, in-person, podcast episode, and I would have to travel to Australia. Darn. I have friends there,
Yeah,
I've
you're
never been to
welcome. Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah, you'll have to come, and you can share in the Angel's Envy when you come.
Sounds like a plan. Well, thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate you coming on and talking about this project, and like I said, the kudos to your team for this beautiful work and the just beautiful storytelling aspect of it. So, I think everyone else will enjoy it as well.
No worries. Thank you so much, Andy. Thanks for having me.